All right, I'm going to show you how to build a database app. It's going to be a pretty simple one. Like you're just going to, the user can enter things they appreciate, and then they can see all the things they've appreciated before in the app. And amazingly, you can use a Google Sheet for your database. It can be as simple as that. So the first thing you're going to do in the tutorial, there's a link, and I just got a sample sheet, and you can actually just create this from scratch if you want. But it's got one heading called appreciations, and then it's got like one example data, blue sky. Okay. So what you want to do is just make a copy, and I'm just going to call this thing Dave appreciate. Okay. But you can call it whatever you want. This is going to be your own Google Doc. And this is going to be our database, this spreadsheet. Okay. So now in Thunkable, I'm going to create a new app, and I'm just going to call it, Dave appreciate. Create my app, and it's going to be pretty quick and easy to connect this sheet to my data. So even if I had a bunch of data over here, it's pretty easy to connect it and show all the data. But the first thing I need is what's called a data viewer list. So I'm going to drag that in, and this is where I'm going to show my Google Sheet. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I need to add a data source, and I've actually got a couple of them. I'm going to create a new one, and you can choose any Airtable or create. There's one within Thunkable, but I'm going to choose a Google Sheet. Very common uh, spreadsheet, right? And I'm going to select a sheet, and then it's going to show me all my Google Sheets, including the one I just created, and I'm just going to choose that file. Okay, and it says which row are your column headers in. Well, my column header is appreciations, so it's in row one is the header, and then the first piece of data is row two. And so if you kind of set things up this way, it'll be set up that way already. Okay, so already I've basically said, okay, that's how it's going to work. In my list item layout, all I have is a title, so I'm going to get rid of the subtitle, and then I just need to bind and show what should appear in the title. I've only got one column, so it's easy. Obviously in this one, it's going to be the appreciations column. But if I had a bunch of data, I could choose which one should show up in my list here. Okay, so already I've got this binding done. I'm going to click preview to run my app, and of course I can run this directly on my Apple or Android, and as you can see, that the item just lists, right? And so I could add more things and rerun it, and whatever data is in the spreadsheet will be there. But what I want is I want the app user to be not even know about the spreadsheet, but be able to enter items. Okay. So I've got this list viewer. I'm just going to kind of make my user interface a little better. I'm going to stick a label in, and that label is just going to say things I appreciate, right? Okay, so that's just a little window dressing. And then I'm going to add an input form. So I'm going to come down here, and I need a text input, and I need a button, right? So so the user can enter stuff and then click on the button. The button's going to say submit. And then in my text input, let me just lift this over there. In my text input, I'm going to change the hint, and I'm going to say, what do you appreciate? It's just a little prompt for the user, and they're going to actually type stuff into this thing. So I've got a text input where they're going to enter stuff. When they click submit, I want whatever they submit to go into my database, and then also, of course, appear in my list viewer. Okay. So anyway, let's just preview this just to see. This is what my app's going to look like now, and of course, I could beautify it much more. Okay. But let's go ahead and do the coding to get whatever gets submitted so it shows up in my data. So I'm going to go to the blocks, and in my blocks, what happened here? Let me just hit refresh somewhere. Thunkable. There we go. Here's my blocks editor. I don't have any code in here yet, right? But when the person clicks the button, I want to grab whatever they typed, which is going to be in text input.text, and I want to use that thing. And what I'm going to do is I really want to change my spreadsheet, right? And you'll notice there's this data sources over here. And that's basically this spreadsheet that I connected to my data list viewer. So I'm going to go to data sources and there's a bunch of blocks. What I want to do is create a row in my table. So I'm just going to grab this purple create a row. And of course, the value is going to be whatever the user typed in, and it's going to stick it into the table. Okay, there's one more block that I want to use. And oh, sorry, actually, it's in the data viewer list. And I just want to refresh the data. So, once I change my spreadsheet, I also want that list in my app to show the change. Okay, that's it. I mean, that's all I got to do. Obviously this is a one column app and you could add more columns and make things more, much more complex, but let's go ahead and test it out. So now if I preview this, it comes up, it's got my blue sky, right? And let's say I'm just appreciating, I don't know, Joe Biden. Okay, if I click on the submit button, notice Joe Biden shows up in my list viewer. So I got blue sky and Joe Biden. And if you look over here in our database, our quote unquote database, there's Joe there too as well, right? So pretty cool. And of course, if you're the app maker or the app manager, you could also add things directly in the data and show it up there. And so now if I rerun my app, it's going to show even Kamala Harris, even though it was entered outside, right, in the spreadsheet. So anyway, pretty cool way that Thunkable will let you map. A very obviously it took me 2 seconds to set up this quote unquote database, and then I can map an app to actually get that data from the database quite easily.